Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Nightfall Terrors. I know many of you enjoy using these videos to help you fall asleep, so before you start to drift off, it would be great if you could leave a comment sharing where you're listening from around the world. If you're enjoying the episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Now, let's get cozy, settle in, and begin. Emergency alert. Do not enter your basement. Remain above ground. It was 10:31 p.m. when my phone vibrated. Emergency alert. Avoid underground structures, including basements. Remain above ground until further notice. My husband glanced up from his phone and met my eyes. Did you just get a... Yeah, that's unsettling, I muttered, eyeing the basement stairs. Our daughter had gone to bed about an hour earlier. What do you think is happening? No idea, he said. Could it be a gas issue, like radon? I asked. We'd had a radon mitigation system installed when we moved in. Maybe it failed somehow, or something had changed. I ran upstairs to check on our 5-year-old Grace, while Luke turned on the TV. Grace was sound asleep, wrapped snugly in her blanket. I watched her for a moment to make sure she was breathing and comfortable, then headed back down. Luke was staring at the screen. It displayed the same message. A black background, white block letters, flickering lines of color top and bottom. Emergency. Alert, avoid basements and underground areas. Maybe we should leave, I said. But it's late, and Grace has school tomorrow. So what? She can skip a day. We could go to my mom's. Luke folded his arms, still watching the alert. He flipped to CNN and other channels, but they were just rerunning old political segments. No mention of any local emergency except on the single channel. I grabbed my phone and searched online. Nothing came up. So I texted Lacey, a mom in the neighborhood whose daughter goes to school with Grace. We were still new in town and didn't know many people. No reply. I really think we should go, I said, pulling a duffel bag from the closet. What about your job? You work from home on Mondays. Yeah, but still. I went to the basement door. The chain lock was still latched. In the kitchen, I grabbed some packing tape. What are you doing? Luke asked. If it's gas or something, I don't want it seeping into the house, I answered, crouching to seal the crack beneath the door. If it were that serious, wouldn't they evacuate us? I looked up at him as I peeled another strip of tape. Okay, then, what do you think this is? He just shrugged. Once I'd taped all the edges, I packed some clothes for Grace and me, added my laptop, and tossed in a few of her dolls. I loaded a cooler with leftover pasta and yogurts. 10 minutes later, we were ready to leave. I'll load the car. Can you get Grace? I asked. Luke headed upstairs while I carried the bags to the car. The night was cold and still. Stars sparkled overhead, and the surrounding pine barrens loomed tall and silent. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. If everyone had gotten that alert, shouldn't more people be leaving? I looked across at the street. That house was completely dark, except for the motion light above the garage, which flicked on as I stepped outside. I opened the trunk and loaded our things. Luke came out, with Grace bundled in a blanket. Her eyes blinked sleepily. We secured her in the car and hit the road toward my mom's place, about an hour away. She's asleep again, I told Luke, watching her little face illuminated by the passing lights. Good. Then my phone buzzed again. Emergency alert. GPS detected movement beyond city limits. Evacuation is not advised. Return home and remain above ground. What the hell? I murmured. What is it? There's another alert. It knows we're leaving. It's using GPS. It's telling us to stay. Luke leaned over to look at my phone. Are you serious? Yes. There. That kind of data is supposed to be private. I thought so too, unless emergency services have some override. We sat in uneasy silence. Luke changed lanes. You're not asking me to go back, are you? He said softly. I checked the phone again. No, keep driving. The highway was eerily empty. No headlights in either direction. That unsettled me. Shouldn't other people be evacuating too? Unless they were all following that second alert. But who blindly trusts official warnings these days? I tried searching again. Nothing online. I refreshed, scrolled. Still nothing. We'd driven 5 miles out. I should have felt safer, but I didn't. I rested my head on the window, its cold surface pressing against my temple. The trees blurred past tall, thin pines, until the scenery changed. Both sides of the highway turned into scorched forest, charred and lifeless. I remembered reading that some pine cones need fire to open and recede. Death, then rebirth, part of the forest's cycle. Another buzz. My heart jumped. But this time it was just a text from Lacey. 2 words. What alert? I typed back quickly. Didn't you get a message? Emergency alert telling everyone to stay above ground. No. Lacey says she didn't get any alerts, I told Luke. He frowned. What? What if only we got them? I asked, my voice shaky. I looked back at Grace, still dozing, her head bobbing gently with the car's motion. That's not possible, Luke said, shaking his head. Only the government or law enforcement can send emergency alerts. Then what if it wasn't real? What if it's a trick, and our basement was actually safe? That's your OCD talking, he said gently. There's probably something wrong in town, maybe a chemical leak, and we left. That's the safest thing to do. I stared back at the blackened trees. Some had survived, oddly untouched. I watched one of them more closely. It moved. Before I could process it, the car jolted to a sudden stop. My body flew forward, stopped by the seatbelt. Sorry, a deer just ran. He trailed off. In the headlights, we saw legs, but not a deer's. Thin, warped limbs that ended in claw-like toes. They extended high, far beyond the light's reach. Above, against the starry sky, something massive and jagged loomed, skeletal and webbed with lines like bones or branches. As I looked, it looked back. A wave of dizziness hit me. The world twisted, pressure crushing down on my skull. Thwack! Something slammed the car's side. We rocked violently. I screamed. Thwack! That mess of limbs, sticks, bone, or something else, flashed outside my window, stars and trees distorted behind it. Luke floored it. We swerved around whatever it was, speeding past the burned woods onto a curving stretch of highway. My phone buzzed again. Emergency. Alert, all clear. Return to your home immediately. We arrived at my mom's house just before midnight. Her brick ranch sat quietly on a suburban street. As I got out, I eyed the pine woods behind her property. Tall, quiet, endless. Carrying Grace inside, I was met by Mom in the kitchen. She was waiting, tapping her fingers on a coffee mug. The house smelled faintly of dust and brewed coffee. I started toward the guest room, then changed course. Her basement was partly underground but converted into an office. There was a couch down there. Grace could sleep on it. We'd take the floor. "Where are you going?" she asked, raising an eyebrow as I unlatched the basement door. "We're sleeping down there." "No, you're not. It's dusty there. Might be mice. We'll be fine. Those alerts were probably a mistake," she said. "Or a system glitch. You're not even in town anymore." I hadn't told her about the thing in the woods. She wouldn't believe it. My mom doesn't do unexplained. If something floated right in front of her, she'd still call it a shadow or light trick. "You're being dramatic," she added. "This reminds me of when you sealed the attic door because of that one bat the exterminator found. You were sure more would get in and bite you in your sleep." "You don't always feel the bite," I snapped. "People do get rabies that way. They can fit through tiny spaces. My point is, the basement's not sanitary." Grace was getting heavy in my arms. I looked at Luke, who just stood there, frozen. I pulled the chain and opened the door. "Kate," Mom warned. Halfway down the stairs, my phone buzzed. Once Grace was tucked in, I checked it. "Emergency alert GPS. Shows you are in redacted. NJ. Failure to comply with emergency directives is a federal violation. Return home. Remain above ground." I held up my phone to show Luke, who was coming down the stairs behind me. His face looked ghostly pale under the harsh white light. Mom followed, right behind him, craning her neck to read the alert too. "Oh, that's nonsense," she said. "That's not a federal offense. It's a state-level thing. And if it were real, it would be an evacuation order, like for a storm or something." She shook her head. "You know what this sounds like? A scammer. I got a call once from someone pretending to be my grandson." "It's not a scam," Luke cut in, not offering any further explanation. He got to work silently, tucking a blanket around Grace and helping her settle in. I turned on the light and checked for signs of mice. Nothing visible. "I'll grab the rest of our stuff," Luke said before heading back upstairs, leaving Mom and me alone. Her expression softened as she looked at Grace, peaceful and angelic. "Do you need anything else?" she asked. "I think we're okay." She nodded and quietly returned upstairs. I looked around the basement. The office supplies were in the far left corner, the desk cluttered with papers and a single framed photo of Dad. He'd been gone 7 years now, and each year, more of his belongings had been boxed up, moved down here, or stored away. I swallowed the emotion and scanned the rest of the room. Beside the desk was a door to the unfinished storage area. On the far end of the basement was a sliding glass door that opened to the backyard. I didn't like that. It felt exposed. Technically, the basement was below ground, but that end of the room with the glass door was above grade. Did that make us vulnerable? Those things couldn't get through glass doors, right? But they weren't supposed to fit through regular doors either. And apparently, we wouldn't have been safe in our own home. I looked out the sliding door, half expecting to see something out there. Maybe this wasn't the safest place after all. We were about an hour away from everything, sure, but still surrounded by pine trees. It wasn't the Pine Barrens exactly, but it was close. The same ecosystem. And if those things came from the Barrens, They only appeared in the burned areas, I reminded myself. I pictured a pine cone spinning in the air, its scales opening in the heat of a fire. Then I imagined stick-like skeletons crawling out, slithering across the ground, reaching upward. Were their maps showing the burned zones? I opened Google Maps, trying to spot charred areas, but I figured the data was outdated by now. Then my phone buzzed. I braced for another alert, but it was just a message from Lacey. My friend Rachel got the same alert as you, BW. Super weird. My stomach dropped. Did she listen to it? Don't listen to it. I started typing, but it sounded crazy. I barely knew Lacey. I hesitated, then backspaced and rewrote my message. Can you send me her number? I just want to ask her about it. It's odd that we both got the same alert. Sure, let me ask her, came the reply. As I waited, Luke came down the stairs, arms full of stuff, cables, plushies, clothes, almost spilling over. Someone else got the alert, I whispered. One of Lacey's friends. Seriously? Yeah. I asked for her number. A minute later, it came through. I called immediately. She answered on the third ring. Hello? Hi, this is Kate. Lacey's friend, I said awkwardly. We got the same emergency alert and we think something's not right. It feels like a setup. There was a pause, but it came from the government, she said. How could it be fake? Because no one else is getting it. These alerts are supposed to go out to every phone in the area. This just doesn't add up. Yeah, it's strange, she said after another pause. Well, we were just getting ready for bed, so... Wait, listen. I think the basement is the only safe place. I think someone or something is trying to keep people above ground. Okay, maybe, she replied, not sounding convinced. Anyway, I've got to go. Sorry. She hung up. Great, I muttered, looking at Luke. My lip trembled. She didn't believe me. She and her family. They're going to. You tried, he said gently, wrapping his arms around me. That's all you could do. I couldn't hold it in. I cried as we spread the blanket out on the floor and lay next to Grace. Her face looked so peaceful. Luke and I curled up under the covers together. Hey, kiddo. I jolted awake. For a moment I thought I was back in my bed, but the rough carpet under me and the ache in my back told me otherwise. My dad's voice, warm and familiar, still echoed from the dream. I could almost feel his arms and the sun overhead as we played by the creek. I rolled over to check on Grace. Her eyes were wide open. She was staring behind me, at the sliding glass door. Slowly, she raised a hand and pointed, turned. Something was trying to crawl through the door, bending and contorting like an animal, squeezing through a too small pet flap. It was eerily silent, except for a faint clicking, like joints popping into place. I froze, heart racing. Its legs were dark and wiry, like a spider's, twisting in the moonlight. It inched forward through broken glass on the floor. I grabbed Luke and shook him. Luke, the creature stopped. I couldn't see eyes or a face, but I felt it watching me. The room spun. My balance gave out like I was on a rocking boat. I wanted to lie down, to stop the world from tilting. No, you can't let that thing near Grace. I scanned the room for anything I could use as a weapon. Go in there, I told Grace, motioning to the storage room. Or, at least, I thought I was. The room blurred. Go. Hide. I stumbled, vision warped and colors bleeding together. My dad appeared in front of me, Except he wasn't right. His eyes sagged from its socket like pressure had crushed his skull. His grin was warped. "Hey, kiddo," he said, but the voice sounded wrong. I gagged, vomit pouring down my shirt and pooling at my feet. The not dad leaned awkwardly, like gravity had shifted for him. One of his arms hung too long and loose. "I miss you. Please," I begged. "Just stop. Come with me. We can be together again. Stop." I never met Grace. Wouldn't it be perfect? The whole family together. The room swirled. I stared at him. His dangling eye, twisted smile, gaunt face. I opened my mouth. A burning pain exploded in my shoulder. I dropped to my knees, trying to scream, to warn Grace. But only howls of pain came out, again and again. When I finally opened my eyes, the dizziness had passed. Luke was pulling me away from the door. Grace peeked from the storage room, eyes wide with fear. I clutched my shoulder, burning pain. My fingers came back sticky with blood. "Bit me. I'm going to die." "What now?" My phone rang. Shaking, I fished it out of my pocket. It was Raquel. "You were right," she said, breathless. "What?" My voice cracked. "About the alert. My husband knows people in telecom. They traced the signal. It's not from the government, not even from town." I waited, barely breathing. "It's coming from the middle of the woods." The hospital was quiet, mostly empty. Dim lights buzzed overhead, casting a greenish hue on the walls. The doctor, a thin older man, didn't seem convinced by my story, but admitted me for observation anyway. Mom stayed at a friend's house with Grace, in their fully underground basement. I didn't want to be apart from her. I wanted her safe, with me. But the hospital was above ground, and I was bleeding. Luke stepped out to use the restroom. I closed my eyes, not intending to sleep, but I was exhausted. The bite throbbed, and I drifted in and out of consciousness. Then I heard voices. I opened my eyes briefly, just enough to see a doctor and nurse standing over me, talking quietly. I shut my eyes again, pretending to sleep. I heard snippets. "She's like the man from last night. John something." A pause. "I know. What is this?" "I have no idea. Should we give her diazepam?" "The other guy. He screamed so much. The family will ask why. It's just a bite." "They'll ask more when she's dead," the nurse replied. "At least we could ease the pain." "Shh." I flinched at the word dead. Now they were both staring at me. I could feel it. "Let's talk somewhere else," the doctor said. Footsteps retreated down the hallway. I opened my eyes. I'm going to die. I lay there for who knows how long, lost in my thoughts, until Luke returned. "How's the pain?" "Awful." I told him what I'd heard. My voice shook. "That doesn't mean anything," he said gently. But I could hear it. He was scared too. "We'll get through this. They'll explain the alert, fix whatever's going on." "Stop." He looked at me cautiously but said nothing. We sat in silence. A couple of times Luke opened his mouth like he wanted to speak, but then closed it again. Footsteps echoed outside, in the hallway. The soft buzz of the TV filled the corner of the room. "I'm calling Rochelle," I said. The line rang 3 times before she answered. I told her everything. The bite, the things I'd seen, I was scared I'd sound crazy, but when I finished, it sounded like she was crying. "I saw my baby," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I lost her at 14 weeks, but I saw this tiny basket with something small and pink inside, and I heard her cry." Her voice cracked. I knew it wasn't real, but I still moved toward it. Ravi pulled me back. "I'm so sorry," I said, hands trembling around the phone. "Thank you. But it didn't hurt you, right? Didn't bite or scratch you?" "No, I don't think so." We sat in silence again. "So what do we do now?" I asked. "Just keep running?" "I've been talking to someone," she said. "Someone who understands this better than we do. Maybe I should come to you." "What hospital are you at?" She said she'd be there in an hour. Rochelle arrived quickly, petite, brown-skinned, with thick-framed glasses. She wore a t-shirt with some video game design and faded jeans. Her hands were twisting nervously as she came in. With her was an older woman, probably in her 50s. Her short, cropped salt and pepper hair made her look even paler than she already was. "This is Jamie," Richelle introduced her. "She's a professor and studies this kind of thing. We've been talking for hours. She wanted to meet you." "This kind of thing?" Jamie immediately sat down and leaned toward me, eyes locked on my shoulder, like I was some kind of lab specimen. "Do you know what's happening to you?" she asked. "Do you?" "Yes. In a way. Have you ever heard of speculative evolution?" "No. It's the study of how creatures might evolve under different conditions. Like, maybe amphibians grow wings like bats if there were no insects near ponds. You get the idea?" Kind of. We also explore what humans or animals might become in the far future, what traits could evolve in response to modern life. Some of it's already happening. New York bedbugs are way more pesticide resistant than those in Florida. Deer are more alert than they were a decade ago because of constant exposure to traffic. Okay, I didn't see the connection yet. You've never seen that image of what humans might look like if they evolved to survive car crashes. The guy has no neck and tons of body fat. No. Well, the point is, some scientists believe that creatures could eventually evolve traits that mimic technology. Birds that look like drones. Bats that can pick up electromagnetic signals. So what if this thing, what you and Rochelle saw, can send out radio waves? What if it hacked the mobile system? That's ridiculous, Luke interrupted. So now this thing can text? No, not like that. Cities and states have preset emergency protocols. Stuff like natural disaster alerts. This creature could have triggered one of those. Same thing happened with Rochelle. Jamie turned to her with sympathy. Our brains constantly send out tiny electrical signals. Sharks can detect them. These things, they've evolved to hijack them. So when I saw my dad, I looked at Luke. It was hacking my brain. Jamie nodded. It's a bit more complex. I think it releases some chemical nearby that affects your neurotransmitters. But yes, that's the idea. Then why is the basement safe? Luke asked. Is it too big to get in? Great question, Jamie said, smiling like she'd been waiting to explain. The creature used that emergency alert about going underground because its powers don't work there, just like your phone loses signal in a basement. We exchanged a long, skeptical look. It sounded like a conspiracy theory, but nothing about the past day had made any sense. How do you know all this? I asked. This isn't the first time it's happened, Jamie said. Her tone was grim. About 10 years ago, near Woodland on the edge of Wharton State Forest. I studied it then. There were fewer of them back then. But not everyone got the messages, Luke said. Just us and Rochelle. Exactly. These beings, I call them stick men. They go after people with vivid imaginations. People who produce strong, distinct brain signals. That makes them easier to track and manipulate. They don't create the images you see. They just pull them from memories or fears you've already imagined. The stronger your fear, the more they can use it against you. And there's more for them to feed on. Feed on, I repeated. They eat brains, Jamie said plainly. I thought I mentioned that. The room fell into another tense silence. Kate said she overheard the doctor saying she was going to die. Luke said softly, "Is it true?" Jamie gave me a look, but didn't speak. Rochelle answered instead, clearly pained. Jamie told me that once it bites you, it's linked to you. It will keep following you until it ends you. It'll show you your deepest fears first, Jamie added, oblivious to the emotion in the room. But when it starts showing you yourself, that's usually a sign you have about a day left. A wave of nausea hit me. I pushed myself out of bed. I needed air, away from Jamie's stare and Luke's worry. I just needed one moment alone. Maybe a soda. A real one. Not diet. I forced the memory of my father and my mother's basement out of my mind. I had imagined that exact phrase years ago, at my lowest, drowning in postpartum depression. That creature, whatever it was, used it against me. I felt sick again. I rushed to the door. "Wait," Regilla said, reaching for me. "I'll be right back," I said sharply. I wandered down the hospital corridor. Machines beeped in the distance. My eyes blurred with tears. I kept walking, left, then right, following the signs to the vending machines. My feet dragged. "Kate, stop." I turned. Luke stood a few feet back, trying not to crowd me. "I just need a second," I told him, voice unsteady. "No, it's not that. Your mom just texted me. We need to leave. Grace." His voice cracked. My chest tightened. What? What happened?" "She fell," he whispered. "She's unconscious. They're bringing her to the hospital." "To this hospital?" I asked, panicked. "They're bringing her," he repeated. Something felt off. That wasn't a real answer. I looked down. No, on the floor. A black, wet trail stretched out, like a cord, connected to Luke's foot, snaking down the hallway. Dizzy. The hallway tilted. "Kate!" I turned. Luke stood behind me, frozen. I looked back. The other Luke was gone. It was me. I was staring at myself. Not a distorted version, not disfigured. Just me, like a reflection. I looked at her hands. She held a pillow. She met my eyes, then glanced down. I followed her gaze. Grace lay on the floor, eyes shut, hands folded neatly. Sleeping. No, no. I knew this intrusive thought. I knew where it led. It's not real. It's not real. I turned and ran, grabbing Luke's hand. Behind me, movement. I didn't look back. I couldn't. He pulled me inside the room. I stumbled in, breathless. "It's here. We have to go underground." Rachel and Jamie looked down. I prepared myself for another nightmare. Instead, I saw blood, dripping from my arm, soaking my shirt, splattering on the floor. Drip, drip. Jamie rushed over. She gently pulled back the sleeve to reveal my shoulder. Necrotic tissue, she murmured. Her voice was low, resigned. It started. I can't die. I won't. Pain surged in my shoulder. I ran for the exit sign. I wasn't discharged. I didn't care. Stop, Luke begged, catching up. But I ran faster. Despite everything, I ran. I wasn't going to sit around in a hospital bed and wait to die. Based on what the doctor had said, that's exactly what the last person had done. I needed to get underground. Maybe I'd have to stay there a long time. Maybe even forever. At least until someone figured out how to stop these things. There was no way I was going to leave Grace without a mother. More than anything, I wanted to see her, to hug her, tell her how much I loved her. But what if that thing could follow me, even into a basement? I didn't think it could, but I wasn't willing to risk it. The smartest move was to get underground. Buy some time. Grace was with my mom, already in the basement. That was the safest place she could be. I ran toward the exit. The red sign glowed in the dim hallway. One of the lights flickered above. My bare feet slapped against the hard floor. The floor felt rough and sharp. I kept running, but somehow the glowing red exit sign didn't seem to get any closer. What was happening? I looked behind me. Luke was gone. Rochelle and Jamie weren't there either. The hallway stretched endlessly behind me, disappearing into the dark. I kept running. Now the exit door was open, but still looked far away. Cold air blew through, lifting my hair. It smelled of pine, damp wood, and decay. I had to keep going. The floor grew sharper. The air got colder. The lights above flickered more violently. Still, the door remained out of reach, no matter how hard I ran. Outside, a few leaves drifted in the wind. Keep going. Suddenly, the lights cut out completely. And just like that, I wasn't in the hospital anymore. I was deep in the woods. Tall pine trees surrounded me. The ground was sandy, littered with sticks and stones that stabbed into my bare feet. Silence closed in on me, broken only by a soft, fluttering sound somewhere nearby. No, this wasn't real. It had fooled me again. I turned around. No lights, no buildings, just endless forest. How far in had I run? How long had I been moving? The darkness pressed down on me. I patted my pockets. No phone. No way to call for help. No way to tell where I was. I inhaled, preparing to scream, but stopped. Would that attract the stick men? Or did they already know where I was? I looked up at the stars, visible through gaps in the trees. Was that Cassiopeia? I wasn't sure. I had no idea how to navigate by stars, and most of the sky was blocked out anyway. No, that wasn't helpful. I had run here. My legs didn't feel overly tired, even if time was distorted. It hadn't felt like I'd been running that long. If I'd gone 10 miles into the Pine Barrens, I'd know. I just had to figure out where I'd come from. I spun in a slow circle, looking for disturbed sand, broken branches, any sign of my path. But it was too dark to see anything clearly. Moonlight gave me just enough visibility to avoid trees, but not enough to track footprints. I stared at the trees. The branches were too high and too thin to climb for a better view. I checked my pockets again. Still nothing. So I picked a direction and started walking. Sticks and pebbles poked at my feet. I tried to move in a straight line. The pine barrens cover over 1,000,000 acres. But I remembered that an acre isn't all that big. If I was somewhere in the middle and kept going straight, I'd hit an edge eventually. 5 hours, 10, maybe more. I knew the stories. The pine barrens were dangerous, even without the stickmen. Carnivorous plants, rattlesnakes, and the forest's strange ability to make people lose their way. I thought of Grace, of Luke telling her I was gone, her falling apart without me. She needed me, years ago, right after she was born. When I was in that dark place, I might not have cared as much, but now I did. I moved faster. The ground cut into my feet. I struggled to walk straight in the dark, and I couldn't shake the thought I might just be walking deeper into the woods. Then I saw it, a clearing. My heart jumped. Maybe this was where I came in. It was a burned-out area. A wildfire had cleared it. The space was lit by pale moonlight. Some trees remained, but they were stripped bare, black and skeletal. Ash darkened the sand below. A few young pines, just inches high, had started to grow again. Everything was still. I felt hopeless. I looked up at the burned trees, stretching like fingers toward the night sky. Snap. I spun around. Someone stood at the tree line. Hard to see in the gray tones of moonlight. But there, I broke into a run, but I tripped. It felt like slow motion. The ashy ground rose up to meet me. My arms took the impact. My shoulder flared in pain. My cheek scraped the ground. Snap, snap, snap. I scrambled to my feet. She was there. Me, standing with arms slack at her sides, hair hanging over her shoulders. "Let me go," I shouted. My voice echoed through the forest. She stepped closer. I heard a wet smacking sound, something black and slick attached to her foot, trailing behind her like a cord, like she was being controlled. She tilted her head and smiled unnaturally. I tried to run again. Dizziness crashed over me. The world tilted. My head grew heavy. I stumbled and threw up, dripping in the mess. "Stop," I choked out. I was lying flat. Vomit soaked the back of my shirt. The edges of my vision filled with dark tendrils, blending into the black pines above. The stars swirled like shooting stars. Everything spun. Then her face was above me. My face, sweat and vomit clung to her hair. Her smile widened. Her mouth opened, wider than humanly possible. Inside were rows of razor-sharp teeth, like a lamprey's, descending into pitch blackness. I tried to push her away, but all I felt was slime. The real creature had me pinned. It was her face, but it wasn't human, just a head, attached to a twisted black mass. "They eat brains," Jamie's words echoed. The teeth got closer, and I couldn't see the forest anymore. Grace, what would happen to her? She wouldn't be okay. Her life would fall apart. I can't let that happen. And then it hit me. These creatures were drawn to brain signals. What if I stopped thinking? Really stopped? I closed my eyes, blocked out the rotting breath on my face, the slime, the fear, even thoughts of Grace. I forced myself to go completely still. Inside, a total blank. Nothing. I heard a clicking sound above me. The creature shifted. I kept the emptiness going. No thoughts, nothing. The creature pulled back, I opened one eye. It no longer wore my face. It twitched and clicked, lifting appendages into the air. Like it was confused, like it couldn't find me. I stayed there, motionless in the burned forest, keeping my mind empty for what felt like hours. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, forcing away every thought, every image of grace, every fear, just emptiness. When the sun finally rose, I sat up. The forest was washed in pink light. I was covered in vomit and slime. My shoulder throbbed, but the creature was gone. It took a few more hours, but with daylight I finally made my way back. After wandering for a bit, I spotted a road through the trees. Turns out I'd only gone half a mile from the hospital, just across the street into the Pine Barrens. Luke and the hospital staff had been looking for me all night. I got to hold Grace again. It was the best moment of my life. I still think the stick man is connected to me. We've been sleeping in the basement, where it seems we're safe. Raquel, Jamie, and I have been working on finding a permanent solution. Someone online who survived the incident 10 years ago claims that drowning might work. For now, I'm just grateful to be home and alive, even if it won't last forever, even if more trouble lies ahead. I've been stuck driving in a highway tunnel for over 10 hours. I somehow found a small pocket of service in this tunnel, barely enough to get this message out. I'm clinging to this single bar of signal like it's a lifeline. Things are getting serious. I'm running low on fuel, and once that's gone, I won't be able to charge my phone either. My supplies, a bag of Sour Patch Kids, a box of Cheez-Its, 2 Red Bulls, and about half a gallon of water. Let me explain how I got here. I've always been a traveler. Road trips across the U.S. are nothing new to me. I'm used to long hauls, overnight drives, and only stopping for essentials, gas, snacks, the restroom. This time, I was driving from Los Angeles to Chicago. I've done it before, but previously I took Route 66 for the experience. This time, I decided to try the faster interstate route, which cuts through the center of the country, Colorado, Nebraska, and Iowa. Everything seemed normal. Long stretches of open road with nothing and no one in sight. But I'm used to that. By the time I started writing this, I had been driving nearly 3 days. Last night I parked overnight in a Walmart lot somewhere in Colorado, maybe Frisco. I had driven 14 hours straight, only stopping to refuel, grab a bite, or use the bathroom. Around midnight, I had Taco Bell for dinner, before crashing for the night. I'm including every detail, because I keep hoping there's a logical explanation for what's happening. Maybe I'm just exhausted. Maybe it's all in my head. I know I should be sleeping and eating better, but when I'm on the road, I lose track of that. That's the draw of it. I stop thinking entirely. That's why I love it. Anyway, I was up at dawn, around 6 a.m. local time, and got back on the road. No deadlines, no real purpose, just pushing myself to see how far I could go in a day. I stopped for breakfast at a small cafe, just a bagel and coffee. Filled up the tank, stocked up on Red Bulls, jerky, and a gallon of water, and headed out again. I didn't stop for 6 hours. Eventually, the energy drinks caught up with me, and I realized I urgently needed a bathroom. I pulled into a tiny gas station, 2 pumps, and a weathered shack of a store. Somewhere around Kearney, Nebraska, time had shifted again. It was around 2 p.m. When I walked in, a bell above the door rang. The man behind the counter looked startled, like he hadn't seen another soul in hours. I asked about the restroom. He smirked. "Buckets out back, princess." He held in a laugh, then handed me a filthy key attached to a block of wood labeled pisser. The bathroom was barely functional, but I managed. When I handed the key back, I noticed the man's name tag read Goose. Before I could leave, Gus asked where I was headed. I told him Chicago. He asked why, and I said I wasn't really sure. Just going. He stared a little too long, then glanced around the store and said, "If you've got a couple of hours, I know a killer scenic route a bit north of here." He described it as a locals-only detour through the hills, full of old legends, high school parties, romantic getaways, and those usual urban myths. Murdered teens, unsolved crimes, eerie disappearances. Nothing I hadn't heard before, but that's exactly why I decided to take the route. I love stumbling across local spots in small towns, those places people hold dear. It makes me feel connected, like I'm part of something bigger, even if just for a moment. His directions were simple. Stay on I-80 for an hour or two. Look for a dirt road on the left. Can't miss it. That would take me where I needed to go, he said. If I didn't find it, no big loss. I grabbed more snacks, Sour Patch Kids, Cheez-Its, 2 Red Bulls, and a pack of menthols. I filled up the tank again, just to be safe, then set off. I lit a cigarette as I hit the road again. My mom would lose it if she saw me smoking in the car, or if she knew half the stuff I did on these trips. Nebraska turned out to be nothing but wheat and corn. Everywhere I looked, endless fields stretched to the horizon, waving like a landlocked sea. The crops grew so high, they obscured everything beyond the road. After about 2 hours, I spotted it. A break in the fields on the left, just like Gus said. The dirt road stood out clearly, a sudden change from the tunnel of corn. I didn't hesitate. I actually felt excited, like I was tapping into some long-shared experience. Every town has its hidden gems. A coffee shop, a trail, a bench in a park. Places people leave parts of themselves. I want to do the same. The road cut north through farmland, eventually leading toward a range of low hills, not quite mountains, but at least not flat. As the road rose, the dirt gave way to cracked pavement and winding turns. The higher I got, the more impressive the view became. Patches of farmland spread out below like a stitched quilt. I lit another cigarette and drove slowly, stopping at turnoffs to take in the scenery. It felt good to be alone. The road was worn but familiar, scattered with empty bottles and cans. I didn't see another person the entire time, and I liked it that way. Then I entered the tunnel. It didn't strike me as strange at first. Mountain roads often go through rock. As a kid, I used to hold my breath through tunnels for fun. I'm glad I didn't try this time. This one was different. Long. I couldn't see light at the end. Dim orange bulbs lined the ceiling, but they barely helped. I drove for 30 minutes, then the lights began to fade, spaced further and further apart until they disappeared altogether. Still, I kept driving, just my headlights piercing the black. Another 45 minutes, then an hour. It was almost 8 p.m., and there was no sign of an exit. I decided to turn around. The tunnel was starting to feel oppressive. My old childhood claustrophobia crept back in. I turned the SUV, barely managed a 3-point turn, and headed back. But after an hour of driving, the lights didn't reappear. Another hour passed, then another. No sign of the entrance. Maybe the lights had gone out, but I should have exited by now. I was starting to panic. Had I really turned around? I clearly remembered the struggle of turning the car. No signal on my phone. And even if I had service, who would I call? My mom. She'd yell at me for trusting some random guy. I don't keep in touch with anyone back home. I've always been a loner. No relationships, no real friends. No one even knew I was on this trip. My mind raced, but I kept driving. Luckily, my car's great on gas. I still had half a tank. Eventually, desperation crept in. My fuel was running low, and when that ran out, my phone charger would too. Music was the only thing keeping me sane. My downloaded playlists were the only company I had. Then, a miracle. 1 bar of signal. I slammed on the brakes and reversed until it reappeared. I didn't care if calling my mom led to a lecture. I just needed someone to know where I was. I hovered over her contact, sighed, and tapped. Call. Nothing. Just that flat, disheartening beep. No service after all. I rested my head on the steering wheel. Tears welled up. I couldn't get stuck here. That wasn't an option. I climbed out and onto the roof of my car, hoping elevation would help. Still nothing. Just the same failed call tone. Then I heard it. Faint at first, like someone coughing. I paused, listened. It came again, louder, a shout, playful maybe, like kids goofing off in the dark. I clung to that idea. If someone else was in here, I could get help. I yelled, "Hey!" My voice echoed off the rock, then silence. Even the wind had stopped, just my breathing. Then, footsteps, hundreds of them, running, from both directions. The sound was thunderous. The ground trembled. My SUV shook. Small rocks fell from the walls. I froze. Then I jumped. Off the roof, into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and locked it. I reclined the seat as far as it would go, and pressed myself into it, wishing I could vanish entirely. My car finally stopped shaking. Silence settled in again. I remained motionless for what must have been an hour, maybe longer. My face was stiff from dried tears, and I couldn't stop trembling. I tried every breathing technique my therapist had taught me. None of it helped. What just happened? I still haven't moved. I'm lying in the driver's seat, typing this. It's nearly 4 a.m. I've been inside this tunnel for close to 10 hours. I thought writing everything down might help me process it all. I still don't understand, but it's helping me stay grounded. Can anyone figure out where I am? Can someone explain what's going on? How does a tunnel suddenly grow by miles? Did Gus know something he didn't tell me? Is that why he sent me here? I'm becoming paranoid. What should I do next? I don't want to leave my car again. What if those things come back? Why did they stop chasing me? Could I have imagined it all in my exhausted, starving state? Driving forward doesn't feel like a smart idea, but it might be my only choice. Eventually I'll run out of gas. My phone will die. I'll run out of food or water. I'm rationing what little I have left. I'm panicking, but I'm glad I brought cigarettes. If anyone knows anything that could help me get out, please tell me. I'm willing to try anything. If anything else happens, I'll keep updating. I hope this message posts. Hi again. I'm still alive, still stuck in this bleak, endless place. Thank you to everyone who responded to my last post with advice, thoughts, anything. Reading your comments helps me feel less alone. Some of you suggested Gus might have laced something. The snacks, the Red Bulls, maybe even the cigarettes. And while that idea is terrifying, I found myself hoping that was true. I wanted to believe I'd just wake up somewhere else, that this was all some drug-induced hallucination. It wasn't. I finally fell asleep around 8 a.m. after being kept up all night by fear. I woke up around 4 p.m., startled and unsure if I was still dreaming or reacting to something real. To be honest, I usually wake up like that. I've had nightmares for as long as I can remember. I don't think my panic came from anything outside of me. I'm still in the tunnel, and I feel the same as I did yesterday. I don't think I was drugged. Another common comment was that turning around might have been my biggest mistake. Many of you are taking Gus literally, believing I need to keep moving forward to get to where I'm meant to go. Maybe that's why the tunnel stretched longer, trapping me in until I decided to turn back around. Like it's trying to deceive me, consume me. So, after waking up, I faced the other way again, back through the tunnel. Hopefully, the right direction this time. My gas was low, under a quarter tank. I was relieved to find a portable charger in my glove box. I plugged it in while driving. I need to stay connected. I need to feel like I'm not completely cut off. Every 10 to 15 miles, I'd hit a brief service spot. Just a flicker of signal before it disappeared again. Like the tunnel was teasing me. Eventually, the gas gauge hit E. I drove past empty for about 30 more minutes before the car finally gave out in the dark. I had been driving for around 3 hours. My car stopped near where I think I turned around the day before. I sat there, knowing deep down what I had to do, even though I didn't want to admit it. I had to walk. Maybe that's what the tunnel wants. To leave me exposed, unprotected by my SUV. No more hiding, no more driving away at the first sign of trouble. I had been delaying the inevitable. I was terrified that stepping out meant facing whatever had chased me yesterday. But I had no other choice. I packed a bag with everything essential. Food, water, my portable charger, a blanket, warm clothes, a journal and pen in case my phone dies. I still want to document this. I brought my flashlight, extra batteries, and even found an old flare in my toolkit. And of course, cigarettes and a lighter. I sat for a while with my packed bag, gathering the courage to open the door. I took a deep breath, counted down from 10, and at 1, I stepped outside. The wind echoed around me, eerie and sharp. I shined my flashlight in every direction. The air was damp and cold. Water pooled at the base of the rock walls. There was nothing left to do but start walking. Leaving the car behind felt like abandoning the only stable thing I had. I walked. I remembered getting a signal about 2 miles before the car died, so I figured I'd hit another sweet spot in about 8 miles, maybe 3 hours of walking. The flashlight barely helped in the pitch-black surroundings. I could only see about 10 feet ahead. The air felt dense, and breathing was tough. Every small noise startled me. Stones skittering, water dripping, even the sound of my own steps. I kept swinging my light behind and around me, looking constantly over my shoulder, even though I couldn't see anything. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I told myself I was halfway after walking for about 90 minutes. Just keep going. I paused to tie my shoelace. When I bent down, the flashlight slipped from my pocket and rolled across the tunnel floor, casting its beam behind me. It stopped against the wall with a metallic sound, illuminating something dark against the rock. A shadow, human-shaped but distorted, standing close to the wall, arms by its sides, face pressed to the stone. I froze. I acted like I didn't see it. I remembered what happened last time I acknowledged something in this tunnel. I quickly tied my shoe, crossed the tunnel, grabbed the flashlight, and walked faster. Away from that thing, my heart pounded. I couldn't tell if I was being followed. I kept going, legs numb from the cold and fatigue. Eventually, I reached the rest spot. I put on a sweater and sat with my back to the wall, wrapped in my blanket. A faint signal bar appeared, like a sign. I opened your comments and read through them, desperate to hear from someone. I guess I started humming. I do it without noticing. My mom used to hate it, but I never really stopped. Just little melodies I can't place. I didn't realize I was humming until I heard it echoed back to me. The same tune from further down the tunnel, where I had come from. I went silent, but the humming continued. Each repetition made me more anxious. It didn't even sound human, more like a distorted, rough mimicry, like it had never hummed before. Then others joined in, from both directions. A warped chorus repeated my tune again and again. I started picturing what these things might be. Were they human-like? Something else entirely? Would they kill me quickly? The sound crept closer. I turned off the flashlight and pulled the blanket over myself, curling up like a kid hiding from monsters under the bed. I focused on breathing. In for 6, hold for 6, out for 6. Just like I was taught. The ground trembled, pebbles rolled, the wind howled. Then the humming stopped, just like that. I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate. I froze, still, curled under the blanket, pressed to the wall. I shut my eyes and imagined myself anywhere else. The steps stopped right beside me. I felt it lean down, heard it breathing above me. I thought, if this is it, then this is it. I felt drops, maybe saliva, land on the blanket. Heard something lick its lips. I held my breath and thought about every mistake I've made, every person I've hurt. Wondered if my mom would even notice I was gone. But it didn't kill me. It just stayed there, breathing and making wet sounds for what felt like ages. And somehow, unbelievably, I fell asleep. Wake up. A sharp whisper snapped me out of it. I was still under the blanket, holding my flashlight and phone. The voice echoed like a leftover scream from a dream. I listened. Silence. I slowly peeked out. My eyes adjusted. No figures nearby. I bit down hard and turned on my flashlight, slowly removing the blanket and checking my surroundings. Nothing. Are they messing with me? Maybe they feed on fear, like something out of it. Maybe none of it is real. The shadow, the humming, the thing above me. Maybe it's all in my head. My mom always said I was beyond help, that my paranoia would eventually destroy me. Maybe this is that moment. I keep trying to believe this is all in my mind, that I'm just delirious from hunger, exhaustion, and isolation. But it's getting harder to believe that. especially now that I see small drops of blood on my blanket. I think I slept for 2 hours. It's close to 2 a.m. I'm about to begin another 3-hour walk to the next sweet spot. I need to keep going until I get back online. I hope some of you have suggestions. I don't think finding my exact location matters anymore. I wouldn't want anyone else to end up in here. I'm not even sure this place is real anymore. Still, maybe you can help me figure out what to do next. Should I confront the figures if they appear again? Maybe acknowledging them is the key to escaping. Maybe I have to face them. What are they? Spirits? Trapped souls? Creatures? Something worse? Have you heard of anything like this? I have endless time to think in here. I've imagined every scenario I can. Anyway, thank you for being here. Even if you can't help directly, just knowing you're out there is helping me stay sane. Hopefully I'll get the chance to write again. I made a deal with the vampires who live near my neighborhood. If you drive past the old city hall and turn left at the dairy farm by the river, you'll find an aging bridge lit by 3 street lamps. That's where the vampires stay. No one knows when they arrived or why they chose that spot. We've just learned to live with them, hoping they leave our loved ones alone. My name is Violet, and I'm the only one who's seen them and made it back to tell the story. It happened just last month. My parents had put me to bed and disappeared into their room to binge watch something. The night had been tense. We'd argued again. That had become our routine ever since my brother Jaime died in a car crash. The grief was tearing us apart, making everything worse. So, I decided to fix it in my own way. Once they were asleep, I slid my window open, grabbed my backpack, and climbed down to where my bike was waiting. The ride took nearly 2 hours. When I reached the bridge, the place was quiet and shadowed, except for those 3 glowing lamps. I got off my bike, leaned it on the railing, and waited. After about 5 minutes, I heard something in the bushes. A light breeze brushed past as a pale figure landed softly on the railing. He was tall, dressed in a long black leather coat, and had pointed ears like an elf. That was Pointy Ears. "You shouldn't be here, warm blood," he said, stepping off the rail. I took off my backpack and pulled out a clove of garlic. "I didn't come all this way for a messenger," I said. "Where's your leader?" Pointy Ears stepped back. The garlic's smell unsettled him. He understood I wasn't bluffing. Another gust of cold air swept over the bridge. 2 more figures appeared, dressed like the first. One looked skeletal, like he hadn't eaten in centuries. The other was a woman, or had once been, with long hair and deep pink eyes. She was Rose Eyes, the one I had come for. "You must have a death wish, warm blood," she said in a voice that was both chilling and beautiful. "What is it you want? To strike a deal?" She jumped to the ground. The others moved in, closing the space around me. The dead don't negotiate with the living. I held out the garlic. My stomach clenched. For the first time, I hesitated. What was I doing here? Before I could react, Rose Eyes grabbed the garlic from my hand. She crushed it effortlessly and licked the juice from her palm. Pointy Ears laughed. I stared, stunned. Garlic was supposed to work. "How did you?" "Your books don't mention us," Rose Eyes said sharply. "If they did, you'd know your tricks don't matter." "What are you?" She smiled, offering no answer. My mind flashed back to home, my parents waiting at the door, hoping I'd walk back in, desperate for a fresh start. I reached into my bag and grabbed my crucifix. "That won't be needed," Rose Eyes said, flicking her hand. My body froze. The crucifix and bag dropped. Out spilled the rest of my tools, a small bottle of holy water, a wooden stake, pointy ears, and the gaunt one recoiled at the sight. But Rose Eyes inspected them calmly, then shoved me gently toward the railing, her face inches from mine. What do you really want? I want to be like you. She tilted her head, intrigued. My parents can't stand me. We just argue. My brother's gone. I'm alone at school. Nothing matters anymore, so I let the words go. I felt lighter. I'd rather be dead, like you. Rose Eyes glanced at the gaunt one. He licked his lips. Give her what she's asking for. Rose Eyes slammed me into a lamppost, tore open my jacket. I felt her breath on my neck, her fangs glinting. Wait, I gasped. Does it hurt? Of course it does. She bit down. The pain was instant, sharp and unbearable. My legs gave out as I gasped in her grip. I wanted to scream, but pointy ears covered my mouth with his hand. Terror flooded my chest as I stared into Rose Eyes' expressionless face. And still, some part of me felt calm. I was tired. So tired. I just wanted to rest. Just sleep. When I woke up, I was in my bed. Same clothes. Blankets bundled over me. I remembered everything. I sat up quickly, touched my neck, searching for any marks. There were none. I grabbed my phone, used the camera to scan every angle of my throat. No signs of a bite. Then I noticed my backpack right there, under the bed, still filled with the same gear. Damn, I checked the time. 6 a.m. The whole thing must have been a dream. I looked toward the window. Dawn had arrived. School, the place I hated most, was starting soon. I got out of bed and pulled back the curtain. Ow! I recoiled as a sharp pain shot through me. I looked at my wrist. A small burn mark had formed. The sunlight had hurt me. I shut the blinds, breathing fast, lungs straining to take it all in. That's when I saw my reflection in the vanity mirror. My eyes were rose-colored, and my teeth. I opened my mouth. My canines had become razor-sharp. Rose Eyes had kept her word. She had given me a new beginning, not as a vampire, but something different. And I was finally ready to face the day. I built a compass that points to the fountain of youth. Now, it's pointing at me. A few months ago, I stumbled across an old forum through a door mirror. Most of the links were dead. There were outdated files and strange diagrams. It felt like part survivalist hub, part fringe metaphysics group. One thread stood out. Source location, Youth Zone, MNX Grid. It was posted by a user whose name was just a series of numbers and slashes. The thread was about the real fountain of youth, not metaphorically, an actual place. The instructions were chaotic, poor grammar, broken formatting, but one sentence kept reappearing. It doesn't matter where you begin. Walk due true north. Do not veer. If the needle shifts, you've already gone past it. Users in the thread debated endlessly. Some said true north meant geographic. Others believed it referred to a magnetic field anomaly. A few insisted it was some kind of cosmic direction. One user claimed you needed a special compass that could align with local energies. Another uploaded a DIY blueprint. No details, just a grainy image of what looked like a needle suspended in oil, encased in unknown. Possibly hematite. It could have been nonsense, but something about it stuck with me. I was feeling detached, worn down. The idea that a place existed where you could walk in and be restored. It struck a chord. I couldn't shake it, so I built the compass. I copied the design, working with materials I barely understood. A quartz vial, what seemed like thickened saline, maybe some glycerin. A hematite ring formed the outer casing. The needle floated perfectly, and whenever I set it down, it didn't just waver. It locked into place, like it knew its target. I planned a solo trip to the northern Rockies. I traveled light, MREs, non-perishable snacks, a tent, a spare compass, which I swore I wouldn't use, a journal, a flare gun, and a backup map. The only rule: follow the compass. No shortcuts, no diversions. Just keep walking in the direction it showed. The first week was calm, cold, but bearable. The skies at night were crystal clear. I slept in a bivy sack, kept my boots outside to prevent frost, and used a small alcohol stove to cook. Every morning, the compass was ready, still pointing in that fixed direction, like it hadn't moved at all. It seemed cooperative, almost guiding. I averaged about 10 to 12 miles daily. Sometimes I'd rest under trees, stretch a bit. I made camp each evening as the sky turned violet. There were no trails, no signs of human activity. It felt like the route was unfolding solely for me. Around day 11, I passed a rock ledge with a clean, vertical split, like it had been sliced. I stopped there, had a chicken and rice MRE, wrote in my journal, and looked out over a dry ravine. It felt significant, so I marked it on my paper map. 4 days later, I encountered it again. Same rock, same split, but now I was coming from the other direction. I checked the compass, still pointing north, still steady, but the angle felt slightly off, not reversed, just shifted slightly west. I tried convincing myself it was terrain confusion. Hills can pull you off track, but deep down, I knew better. Still, I kept walking. By day 17, I came across a stone pile I distinctly remembered stacking. Same arrangement, same flat top where I'd cooled a food pouch, but I had no memory of circling back. The compass hadn't changed, still forward, still fixed. That night I made camp beneath a twisted pine. At one point, I woke to relieve myself and saw the compass needle twitch, just once, like it was correcting itself mid-thought. On day 19, I found an old fire ring with a charred can in the ashes. Same brand I'd eaten earlier. I looked down and saw my own boot prints already pressed into the dirt. That's when the phrase came back to me. If the needle drifts, you've already passed it. I don't recall deciding, but I picked up my pace. Not toward anything, just away. My rations were nearly gone. My hands were shaking. I hadn't seen a single animal in days. Just that needle, confidently pointing, more certain than I felt. When I reached a frozen stream, I was sure I'd already crossed. I realized the compass had rotated entirely, still locked on, but now it was pointing directly behind me. That was the worst part. Not that it had changed, but that I hadn't noticed when I camped again at the same spot where I found a note I'd left, sealed in plastic beneath a cedar branch. I didn't remember writing it. That night I set the compass down on a rock beside my back. I swear I didn't sleep, but when I looked again, the needle was pointed straight at my chest. I stood quickly. The needle quivered as if responding to me. Somehow, I made it back. I followed stars, the sun, anything but the compass. I don't remember much of the return, just snapping back to awareness near a ranger station, mouth dry, lips cracked, teeth gritty with dirt. I got home 3 days later. The compass is still in my apartment. I keep it on my desk. I've tried hiding it, drawers, closets, sealed boxes. Doesn't matter. When I bring it out, it points at me. Every single time. I've spun it, carried it, flipped it upside down. The needle always returns to me. Sometimes it moves before I do. At first, I thought it was some fluid trick or magnetic quirk, but my sleep's been uneasy. And when I do sleep, I wake up feeling different. Not unwell, just altered. My handwriting's neater. My joints are quiet. I think my vision's sharper. But I forgot my sister's birthday. I never used to forget that. Yesterday, I remembered my 3rd grade teacher vividly. I haven't thought of her in years. But I couldn't recall my most recent job interview, or even my apartment number. I used to long for simplicity, for that childhood ease. No stress, no noise in my mind. But now, that silence is growing, and it doesn't feel like peace. It feels like erasure. I don't think I reached the fountain. I think I moved past it, and something may have followed me out. The compass isn't the one drifting anymore. I am, and I have no idea how far I'll go, or who I'll be when I arrive. I should have heeded his warning. I still remember that old town. I wish I didn't. I wish I couldn't recall how the wind rustled the trees, or how rain echoed off the gutters. I've tried hard to erase those memories. Tried numbing my mind with heroin and cocaine more times than I cared to admit. Hoping to replace my blood with poison just to forget. When I was 6, my father lost his job in construction. His cries, his voice shaking as he feared we'd lose our home, are sounds I've never been able to forget. My mother worked tirelessly to help, but between the high cost of city living and her limited education, she couldn't support us alone. Eventually, she found work on a livestock farm in a small Kentucky town. It was all she could get. We arrived around 10 that morning. Our car rolled into a dusty driveway. The house wasn't bad, painted a fading light blue with window trims that someone had carefully painted to avoid drips. I was the first one out, always eager to explore, according to my mom. "It's something," my dad mumbled as he stepped out, hungover from a night of heavy drinking. "It's not terrible," my mom replied shortly, grabbing her bags and heading toward the door. I rushed ahead, nearly tripping her as I darted inside, eyes scanning everything. The years passed with little change. Our town stayed quiet, almost forgettable, except for the occasional disappearance. My dad stayed an alcoholic. My mom remained kind, but distant in ways that didn't always feel intentional. I had only one real friend growing up, a boy my age named Case Osborne. Unlike me, his family had deep roots in the town. Just saying his last name got people's attention. No one quite knew how the Osbornes made their money, but no one questioned it either. Case was the opposite of me, outgoing and always the life of the party. During our freshman year, he dragged me to at least 10 bonfires and house gatherings. I remember how his whole face lit up when he smiled, the crooked dimple on the left side of his perfect face. What I thought was a normal teen life ended suddenly on my 17th birthday. "Hey, Finn's mom," I heard Case's voice while I lounged on the couch. "Is he home?" Of course he knew I was. I was always home. "I'm here, dude. You're like officially old now," he said, poking his head in. Old and still unemployed. It wasn't that I didn't want a job. I just didn't know where to work. I tried helping at the ranch when I was 15, but it creeped me out. There were hardly any cows, yet somehow the town thrived on the meat they sold. After that, I gave up on working altogether. Case shot my mom a look she knew well, his unspoken request to borrow me for the day. We spent the rest of the day walking and driving through town and the nearby trails. Around 11 that night, Case stretched out in the passenger seat, cracking his neck. "My parents set an 11:30 curfew tonight." "What? Since when do you have a curfew?" "Man, who knows?" he said with a shrug. "You should just sneak in through my window. After, we can still chill." I'd snuck into his room so often it was practically routine. "Yeah, let's do that. I really don't want to go home and deal with a drunk rant on my birthday," I said as I texted my mom, letting her know I'd be staying over. I started the car, and we drove in silence. Case stared out the window. Finding his house was easy. It was the only mansion in town. 3 stories of polished architecture surrounded by walls taller than the trees. His room was on the 2nd floor, but his mom had placed a decorative ladder there for ivy and flowers, which made it easy for me to climb. Once he was inside, I parked, climbed the ladder, and pushed open the window. I shut it behind me and crawled under his bed. I heard muffled voices from downstairs. I couldn't make out the words, but I still tried listening, even though I knew Case would tell me everything later. I'm just naturally curious. After about 30 minutes of scrolling through my phone, the door creaked open. The steps were slow and heavy, the breathing labored. I froze, thinking it might be his parents, and shifted closer to the wall. Light from the hallway spilled in and around a shadow before the door closed again. I held my breath, terrified any sound would give me away. The bed creaked as someone sat down on it. I shut my eyes and took a deep breath. When I opened them, I saw the top of Case's head. Then slowly, his face came into view. His eyes were wide. I didn't recognize the expression. It didn't look like him at all. "Vinny, Case, don't go home. No, run. Run now. And don't ever come back." I wish I could keep going, that I could just let it all out. But even writing this down makes me feel sick. Maybe someday I'll finish the story. Or maybe I'll take the secrets of that little town to my grave. There is no Costa Rosa. For a long time, I avoided sharing this story. It's difficult, uncomfortable, and, to some extent, hard to believe. But if I'm ever going to move forward, I need to leave it behind. So yes, let's talk about Costa Rosa. Many of you might be wondering, what's Costa Rosa? Fair question. It was a niche hashtag that briefly made the rounds on certain corners of social media in 2017. Back then, I was working behind the scenes as a sort of community manager for a group of influencers. None of them were household names, but they had loyal followings. Their content catered to specific age groups, causes, or subcultures. The appeal was always to seem genuine, brand safe, and relatable. But behind that image, these creators had full media teams, managers, stylists, and others making sure everything was curated and approved. I was part of that behind-the-scenes network. I can't name anyone for obvious reasons. Some of them are still active in different ways. Others, I'll leave unnamed out of respect. Now, about Costa Rosa. For several weeks, my team and I kept running into a recurring issue. There was an ever-present pressure for perfection, and coordinating individual travel and content setups for influencers across different countries was becoming unsustainable. We had a vegan creator in Cardiff and a warm-hearted baker in rural Tennessee. It was a logistical mess. As interest declined, we knew we needed to focus efforts on something fresh. That's when someone suggested a joint destination. One big, resort-style trip. We approached several places, hoping for sponsorship deals in exchange for positive content coverage. The idea was to concentrate all our energy and talent in one place and generate as much polished material as possible, but no one was interested. Then someone asked, "Does it actually have to be real?" At first, we thought it was a joke. You can't visit a place that doesn't exist. But the more we discussed it, the more it made sense. Online reality is flexible. We could call it exclusive, someone said, invitation only. Like a private island getaway, added another. We just need a name. And a region. Maybe somewhere off Central America. Belize, Panama, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's in Africa. No one will care. Eventually, we agreed on a made-up island near Costa Rica. We still needed a name. I hadn't spoken much, and the silence was starting to feel awkward. So I just said it. Let's call it Costa Rosa. The Pink Coast became our all-in project. We brainstormed wild concepts. One food content creator came up with 3 crab recipes and labeled them traditional island dishes. One of our editors proposed altering the beach colors in post-production to give the sand a pink hue. We invented names for streets, hiking paths, and fishing boats. We compiled a fake list of tropical fruits supposedly native to the island. We wanted to be ready with answers if anyone asked. It turned into a game, people clapping for each other's lies. I remember one person pitching a glowing waterfall as proof of the island's unique ecosystem. Honestly, I was into it. This was the industry we were in. Costa Rosa represented a massive business opportunity. Naturally, our influencers loved the idea. All we had to do was frame it as a chance to inspire and empower their followers. Privately, though, I was struggling. I had a communications degree, met my fiancée in college, but I fell into this work accidentally. I've never had the typical influencer look, and being surrounded by those who did made me feel like I finally belonged. That feeling was something my fiancée couldn't relate to. We fought often. Working from a phone meant I was never really off duty. If I saw something interesting, I'd tag it, share it. If I heard about a new spot, I'd go scout it. My friends and partner got tired of always competing with my job. I understand now. They always came second. Then we launched the first Costa Rosa content, and things got worse. We were arguing constantly. I thought it was a bold idea. He called it deceptive. I insisted we weren't selling a product. He said we were selling an illusion. Eventually, we postponed the wedding. Luckily, we hadn't renewed our passports yet. Otherwise, we would have lost thousands on a non-refundable honeymoon. We never officially broke up, but each night the distance between us felt more permanent. About 2 weeks later, it all unraveled. Sure, the campaign was generating views, and some sponsorships were lined up, but we hadn't anticipated what would come next. A group in Eastern Europe hijacked the concept entirely. They made their own Costa Rosa content without ever contacting us. They weren't even subtle about it. Other copycats appeared too. Some people on Twitter claimed they had declined invites to Costa Rosa. Others said they were approached, but turned it down. A singer in London pretended she was going, later backing out in a live stream, showing off a gift bag from the organizers. And then things got worse. Scammers stepped in. Fake contests, raffles, like this video to win a trip to Costa Rosa, and actual money was being moved around. We panicked. We hadn't authorized any of it, and neither had our talent. But what could we do? Admitting the truth would end our careers. One team member suggested us a workaround. We find a real place that looked like Costa Rosa and filmed there, framing it as the real destination. That way, if questioned, we could claim creative liberties. Amazingly, we found a perfect match. I never learned the actual name of the place. We all agreed to just call it Costa Rosa to avoid slip-ups. Everything happened fast. A conference, call, tickets, airport pickups. I lost my luggage, but there was no time to deal with it. I just had to get there and hope the rest would fall into place. I slept through most of the travel. There was a boat. The air felt different. The signs were in another language. And then, there I was, standing barefoot on the pink sand. It really was pink. We'd made up almost everything about Costa Rosa. The pink beaches, the morning mist. We called it a refreshing summer fog that gave the island a dreamlike glow. But that mist, it was real. I couldn't even see my hands clearly through it. Seeing the place in person felt surreal, like something out of a movie. It was uncannily close to what we'd described. Pink sands, fruit trees, exotic birds. No glowing waterfall, though. But maybe those only showed up at night. We couldn't believe our luck. It might as well have been the real deal. There were 16 of us, 4 influencers, the rest crew. Everyone had the same reaction. It felt like walking into a dream, and we knew dreams. Creating them was our job. No one was there to greet us, which was odd. Our luggage had likely been taken ahead to the hotel. We figured there was a mix-up on the arrival time, so we waited by the shore, soaking in the view. It really was stunning. I dozed off as others tried to reach someone at the hotel. A few people considered walking, but with all the gear we had, no one was rushing. Jay eventually nudged me awake. He was one of our camera guys, a soft-spoken Southeast Asian guy with round glasses, who usually just nodded and smiled through things. He had this way of staying in sync with whatever was happening. "There's people," he said. "Looks like we're moving." I sat up and saw a dozen strangers walking toward us. Lots of smiles, handshakes, excited greetings. At first, it was hard to place them. Then it hit me. They weren't staff. They weren't from the island. They were tourists. "I can't believe we made it," someone shouted. "I thought this was a scam," said another. "I really did." They came right up to us. Some recognized our influencers immediately. One of the talent gave me a half smile that clearly meant, "Please get me out of here." We stepped in quickly, trying to manage the crowd, thanking them, keeping things calm, and gently explaining that this was a private event. The tourists didn't seem to mind at all. They were still riding the high of being there. "I can't believe we're here," one of them said. "It really feels like a dream." We started walking. There was no point in staying still, and we needed some space from the tourists. It was hard to believe how unlucky we were. This place had been carefully vetted, and the odds of someone else finding it at the same time we did were almost non-existent. It wasn't just unlikely, it was nearly impossible. It was Kim, one of our influencers, who finally spoke up. She was a short woman in her early 30s, known for her marriage advice and calisthenics channel. "Can someone who booked this just call the hotel?" she asked. "It's been hours." Everyone fell silent. No one had a clear answer. We all just pointed fingers at one another, assuming someone who didn't show up was the one responsible for the booking. But it left me with a nagging thought. It had all happened too quickly, suspiciously quickly. We spent the afternoon and early evening walking along a long road, picking fruit straight from the trees and drinking from the island springs. We met a couple of tourists, but they didn't recognize us and didn't even speak the same language. They were just happy to be there. It was all so surreal. No one felt tired, no one felt particularly hungry or thirsty. Fresh fruit hung from the branches and exotic scents filled the air. I remember seeing a blue sunflower, almost as tall as me, just off the side of the road. Everything felt perfect. Promoting a place like this would have been effortless. But there was something off about it, and I started to notice it affecting the others. I first saw it in Jay. He was staring at his hand, opening and closing his fingers slowly, almost as if he was trying to sense something. When he noticed me looking, he reached out and touched my cheek. I pulled back slightly. "Sorry," he said. "I didn't know you were real." I laughed it off, and so did he, but it was strange. We never did find the hotel. We came across a few road signs, but no one really paid attention. Some of the street names matched the ones we'd brainstormed in our group chat. Some hadn't even been made public. As the sun began to set, the island seemed to change. A faint glow emanated from the water, and the distant sound of insects filled the air. Even in the coolness of the evening, Costa Rosa felt comfortable. Some of the group stripped down to their underwear. It had a sort of spring break vibe, like we were here to have fun, not work. People started pulling pranks. 2 guys went skinny dipping. One of the producers found a mossy spot near a rock and fell asleep. Kim, the calisthenics enthusiast, had started making out with one of the social media managers. By the time I left them, they were already getting into second base. But I was most concerned with Jay. There was something about him that didn't feel right. He was tearing bark from a tree and rolling it into a sharp point. He kept poking his finger with it, as if testing whether he could feel anything. He was smiling too much. It was hard to focus. I kept shaking my head, trying to clear the fog from my mind. I probably looked strange, but I doubt anyone was paying attention. They were all too absorbed in their own distractions. When night came, I fell asleep on the moss. It was the most peaceful, comforting sleep I'd ever had. The perfect temperature, the perfect softness. Who needed a hotel? By morning, the fog had rolled in again. I could barely see my hands in front of me. For a moment, I didn't even know where I was. I had to retrace my steps in my mind. The flight, the boat, everything was a blur. But it didn't matter. All that mattered was that I was in Costa Rosa. The island seemed covered in a soft cloud. I saw a few silhouettes in the distance, but I couldn't make out who they were. I sat, taking in the atmosphere, eating some fresh fruit for breakfast, though I couldn't remember where I got it from. When the fog finally lifted, most of the group had disappeared. Some had wandered off, and others seemed to have followed hiking trails. Both Kim and Jay were gone, and no one seemed to have a plan. We were all too distracted, me included. As I walked around, feeling the moss beneath my toes, I tried to recall what I had packed. A pair of socks, a shirt, anything. I had a vague memory of my suitcase, but I couldn't remember what was inside. I remembered getting into a taxi, or maybe an Uber. But then there was a gap in my memory. A check-in, a ticket perhaps. I thought about my fiancé. We were still together technically, but something from our last conversation kept nagging at me. Not our fights, but something trivial. A small detail that was bothering me, like an itch I couldn't scratch. I hadn't realized how long I had been wandering until I realized I was lost. There was no path. The others were gone, but the island was still pleasant. Around noon, I saw a small group in the distance gathered around a clearing. My first instinct was to wave, but something about them made my chest tighten. I hesitated, and as I did, I noticed a few things. All three of them were completely undressed, and they were strangers. 2 young men and an older woman. One of the men was holding something in his hand, and they were all focused on the ground. I crouched down to listen from a distance. "It feels so real," said the man with something in his hand. "Like I'm really here." "It's amazing," said the older woman. "It's perfect." They shared fruit and laughed. I was just about to get up when the man with the object turned. He was holding a gun. He pointed it at something on the ground and fired 3 shots. The others cheered. "I've always wanted to do that," he said, smiling. "I love this." They turned their attention away and walked off, leaving me to sneak forward to see what they had done. The sudden gunshot broke the otherwise peaceful, tropical silence. I froze when I saw her. Kim. She was face down in the undergrowth, shot dead at close range. More people had arrived by the time I found Kim. It felt like they had all been invited at once. Everyone was saying the same thing. "This is a dream. It feels too good to be true." I stayed close to a road, watching, hoping to see someone I recognized, but it was getting harder to focus. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like a dream. I barely felt my fingers when I pinched myself, and yet I knew something was off. I heard more gunshots throughout the day. There was smoke in the distance. By dinner time, I walked to the beach and saw 2 women in the water, fighting. They laughed and cheered as they attacked each other. One of them dunked beneath the surface, and the bubbles stopped. The other didn't seem to notice. The more I encountered people on the island, the stranger they seemed. Some brought weapons like the man with the gun. Others had chains or barbed wire. One man was walking around with a Star Trek sword. Some people seemed friendly, casually chatting with others they knew, but others acted unpredictably, attacking at random. In the afternoon, I heard someone shout they had spotted one of our talents. I think it was the baker. People rushed toward her, cheering as they ran across the sand. "I've always wanted to meet her," one person said. "She has such a lovely voice." "I can't stand her," muttered another. She's so self-centered. It was like they weren't even having a conversation. Just random, unfiltered thoughts. I followed the crowd for a while. Some of them noticed me, but didn't care. I wasn't who they were looking for. I wasn't a famous face, just another person. I didn't want to think about what might happen if I tried to intervene. I was outnumbered. Then, I saw Jay. I didn't recognize him at first. He had made a shiv from a broken camera stand and was covered in dry blood. But he was calm. Too calm. He looked at me, blinking slowly like a cat sunbathing. He reached for me, and my instinct was to pull away. But I froze. He could have put that shiv in my neck in an instant. He ran a bloody hand across my cheek. I've always wanted to do that, he whispered. You look so soft. He nuzzled his nose against my ear and sighed, then stepped away. You're so nice, he mumbled. I like you. And with that, he wandered off. Maybe I was lucky he didn't have more on his mind. Maybe to him I just seemed soft. Maybe that was all there was to it. Others weren't as fortunate. They captured the baker and dragged her out of the woods. There was a mix of cheering and a scream as they tied her to a pole, pulling her through the pink sands like some kind of trophy. It's not real, she screamed. It was all made up. We made it up. I couldn't bear to watch. Someone held a knife. Another wielded a spear. Some were filming with their phones. The shouting became frantic and high-pitched before it suddenly stopped. They left her there, roasting on the fire. Everyone wanted a piece of it. Some were devoted fans. Others just wanted to see her burn. Search parties were sent to find the others, though most tourists had lost interest, now sprawled on the beach like animals in heat. I must have sat there for hours before someone noticed me. A middle-aged man with untamed hair and dark eyes approached. I couldn't tell what he was chewing, but it smelled like meat. Come sit by the fire, he offered. It's perfect. I wanted to refuse. I wanted to run, but I needed to stay under the radar. Otherwise, I'd be next. If I played along, I might get some time to figure things out. So, despite every instinct telling me to flee, I swallowed my fear. All right, I agreed. I'll join you. He smiled, not giving it a second thought. They made another fire in the sand and began singing and dancing. Some had brought bottles, likely filled with vodka. It was a chaotic display of impulses, ranging from violence to lust. I sat by the fire, hoping to stay unnoticed, hoping to blend into the background. It seemed to work. I stared into the flames where a crackling skull seemed to look back. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up long enough to watch the bone ashes turn to dust and for the morning fog to settle over the island. It felt like the island was being wrapped in a blanket. But now that I was paying attention, I noticed something more. There were people moving in and out of the mist, coming and going. Some would disappear into it, and others would appear from it. There was no way boats or planes were moving that quickly. I could only draw one conclusion. Costa Rosa wasn't real. This place, this island, couldn't be real. I wanted to give up. The others seemed to embrace it all so easily. They accepted the violence, the love, the hatred, without feeling a thing. But I couldn't. I knew the truth about Costa Rosa, and no matter how many times I wandered into the fog, it wouldn't let me leave. By morning I figured it out, the thing that had been bothering me. The passports. My fiancé and I hadn't renewed our passports. There was no way I could have traveled abroad. Somehow, I must have known all along. Maybe that's why I wasn't as affected as the others. There was always a nagging reminder that I couldn't escape. But now that I'd realized it, did that mean I was as trapped as the rest of them? There were new faces everywhere. Some were just lying on the beach, basking in the sun. Others hung from trees, skinned. It was an absurd contrast of behaviors. Two people walking hand in hand on the beach, chatting about their favorite TV shows. While just a few yards away, a man was carving a dagger from a broken rib. I wasn't spared either. A woman obsessed over my hair, ripping out a handful. A young man approached me, kicking me relentlessly until he grew bored. Rocks were thrown at me, not to hurt, but seemingly to settle some bet or contest. But things were just getting started. With every hour, the situation grew worse. By night, the waters turned luminescent red. People were tied to burning palm trees, their sizzling bodies left behind. Some screamed at the sky. Others murdered each other with sharpened bones, flint, and rocks. They painted each other in blood and ash. The screams and laughter mixed into a chaotic chorus, and it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. To them, it was all just a dream. Nothing mattered. I found a hole in the ground and covered myself with palm fronds, hoping to make it through the night. People were attacking each other, and I couldn't risk being noticed. Most had stopped talking altogether. Some just howled or barked at each other. A few screamed about a broken god or a rotting tree stealing the moon. Then, a sound. My cell phone. I had forgotten it even worked. I assumed the battery had died, but it still had a faint signal. The service showed 0 bars, but I received a text. It was from my fiancé. I know we need space, but I miss you. That was all it said. I tried to reply, but there was no signal. I held the phone close to my chest, feeling my heart race. Around me, people rushed by, tearing down trees, making rope, cutting down the island, each other and themselves. It was all just fuel for the fire. Then, someone noticed me. A young man, no older than 20, with a shaved head and a deep cut across his eyebrow. Blood kept dripping into his eye, and he blinked it away spasmodically. "Little mole lady in her hidey hole," he sneered. "Is that as deep as you go?" I stayed silent, staring up at him, hoping he'd lose interest. But it didn't work. He straightened up, grabbed something sharp, and approached. "Let's get you out of there, mole lady." He jabbed at me with a makeshift spear made from a plastic rod. The first strike hit my bicep, striking a nerve. The second came close to my ear, almost shaving off a few strands of hair. The third jab cut my shoulder. It happened so quickly that I didn't have time to react. Then something unexpected happened. The young man, like so many others, was attacked. A fast, clean strike to the neck. He clutched at his throat, crumpling to the ground next to me, his blood spilling onto my chest. His attacker stood over us, looking at me. It was Jay. He looked at both of us, the dying man and me, without any reaction. He'd seen so much at this point that it barely seemed like an action. He leaned in for a closer look, then smiled. He must have recognized me, but without a second thought, he wandered off. I lay there with the dying man on top of me, and waited for it all to end. I just had to survive until morning. I gripped my phone tightly, closed my eyes, and tried to block out the night's chaos. The screams, the laughter, the madness. It all mixed into a blur. But I waited. People rushed by, oblivious. All they saw was another body, resting on a bed of palm fronds. By morning, I had a plan. The people who accepted Costa Rosa as their reality seemed to come and go freely. Every time that fog rolled in, something shifted. I was going to make one last desperate attempt. I made my way down to the beach, the pain in my cuts and bruises dull but persistent. A soft breeze blew through my hair. I took out my phone, turned it to selfie mode, and hit record. Despite the lack of service, the video streamed. "Hey," I said, forcing as much enthusiasm as I could. "Welcome to Costa Rosa. Check out this beach. Why would anyone want to leave, right?" I wasn't sure if anyone was watching. Maybe no one was. But as I stared into the camera, it felt like it was watching me. "Right," I repeated, forcing a smile. The screen went dark as the feed cut off. The battery died. Then a gunshot. A young man standing at the edge of the fog took aim. Fucking vultures. I barely noticed myself kneeling, clutching my stomach where I'd been shot. The salt water stung the wound as I crawled away from the beach and into the ocean. It was then that I realized I was shot. Costa Rosa was perfect. It was everything we needed it to be. All I had to do was believe in it. I'd shown my loyalty, and it would reward me. It had to. It had to. I took one last breath as I sank beneath the surface. The fog closed in. Far from Costa Rosa, there's a distant, inhuman presence. Something that listens to our wishes and makes them come true. Like childhood wishes upon stars, as adults, we wish upon likes, hoping for love, money, or fame. They gave us exactly what we asked for. No malice, just an island in the sun. Salt water filled my ears, and my heartbeat slowed. Pressure built in my head as I sank. The fog blurred my vision. I reached out, desperate. The fog parted. I was crawling. The sand had turned to concrete. A familiar chill replaced the warmth. I was home. I called out to my fiancé, and he heard me. Despite the gunshot, the stab wounds, and the bruises, there was one soothing thought. I got your message. I had been gone for days. No one had heard from me. They'd been searching. I tried to stay connected, but most of the others were gone. The baker burned to death. Kim was shot. Some fell asleep behind the wheel and crashed. But no one questioned their deaths. They were just accidents. When they asked who shot me, I told them it was someone from the fog. A half-truth, at least. Jay, however, was still missing. If I had to guess, he's still there, living his best life on Costa Rosa. The video I shot on the beach is still out there. It's real. You can see the fog and the pink sand, but the hashtags are gone. The promos too. Sponsors cleaned up the SEO. I've moved on since then. I'm working on my master's degree. This experience taught me that I'm a good listener, and I should make use of that. But I don't comment anymore. I've gotten married, and my wounds have healed. But the memories sting when I see those I worked with in videos about top 50 social media deaths and similar sensationalist content. I think those pink beaches still exist, and the glowing waterfalls. But I'm starting to forget what it felt like. Maybe that's the price of leaving Costa Rosa behind. you start to forget. That's why I had to write this down. But I've learned one thing, and I'll never forget. In the business of lies, don't expect good things to come true.